Welcome back to Wines with Scott Leinster, the sommelier and wine director here at Mount Alverno Luxury Resorts, and Christopher Belisov, who is one of our owners and also a really great mentor to me. But also, this is our second installment of our discussion about some of the wines that we have on our wine list. Specifically, with one of the brand new wines that we've added, the Domaine Chanson Les Chenevots Premier Cru from 2018 White Burgundy. This is one of my favorite wines in the world. White Burgundy in general is my favorite wine in the world. In our first installment, we talked about Cabernets from Napa Valley, one of your favorite wines that you've ever had in your life. Now I'm get to introduce Chris to one of my favorite wines, being Domaine Chanson. And Chris, we've had a chance to initially taste the wine. Have you ever had White Burgundy before?
I don't believe I have, and I regret not having it because this is absolutely wonderful.
What's interesting about White Burgundy is it's such a boutique product. It's such an in-demand product. When it comes to building a wine cellar that you're going to be holding on to for years, if not decades, like our plan is here at Mount Alverno, White Burgundy and Burgundy in general is definitely a part of the conversation. These wines are so long-lived in the cellar. This wine, for example, could last 15 to 25 years in the cellar without even thinking about it. This wine is from 2018, so it is quite young, but that's okay. Burgundy in youth is delicious on its own. But if you have the patience to wait 10 years, this wine is just going to be absolutely singing.
So, Scott, you say it's a young wine. And what I'm getting out of the wine is some kind of like pleasurable but sour notes, like a green apple, almost like not a sour cherry, but more of the green apple notes.
Yeah.
What happens with age? Does that mellow or?
Yeah. The flavor profile and the color is going to change so much over time.
So you mentioned that this wine is fairly young.
Yeah.
Would it benefit from being decanted? I know I've never had a decanted white wine, but would this be something that could benefit from being decanted?
Absolutely. I know all wine will open up when it comes to its relationship with the air. Something that we talked about in our first installment. Right. And white wine is no different. The only difference is that with white wine, that window can become much shorter than it can with red wine. Red wine you can decant for sometimes hours on end, but white wine, that window becomes a lot shorter. So putting it in a decanter, you either have to consume it much more quickly, or what you don't want to do is decant it or have it open up for too long because you can spoil the wine.
That you put it in an ice bath if you decant it?
No, because one of the things is that especially with this wine, because it's coming right out of the fridge, you want, especially White Burgundy, you don't want it to be as cold as possible. You want the temperature to come down a lot, because a lot of the times, like a really, really cold wine, like a Pinot Grigio or that Pecorino we tasted not too long ago, those wines are meant to be like ice cold, like right out as cold as possible in your glass. They're light, refreshing, perfect on a day like today on our patio, which we're going to be talking about later. But with this wine, having it warm up, having it not be just as cold as right out of the fridge, you get a lot of those, all of the fruit set. You get a lot more of all of the aromas from the wine happen when it is more, not room temperature, but not ice cold.
Like we're looking at 16, 17 degrees would be best?
Yeah, but at the same time, if you're going to have like a really nice bottle of White Burgundy like this, my suggestion is that take it out of the fridge for a half an hour to an hour, keep it on the counter just so it comes up in temperature a little bit, just because you just get so much more of this.
I don't know, Scott. I've had a few sips, and I think the best suggestion in serving this is have a second bottle waiting.
Absolutely. Let's move on and talk about the wine specifically. There's some really cool aspects to this wine that really should be noted. This wine is from 2018. This wine is 14% alcohol, which is really high in comparison to a lot of Burgundy. A lot of Burgundy, both white and red, are usually in the 12.5 to 13.5% alcohol. This one is 14. It is a very, very hot vintage of 2018 in this part of France. So you get a lot more riper fruit because of it. And because of that, your alcohol content tends to be a little bit higher, especially in this vintage.
Does that change the flavor profile of the actual vintage?
It changes the way that the winemaker makes the wine. It changes the way that they decide of how long they're going to age it, how many are, and how, just the specific wine that it's going to produce. The thing about Burgundy is all of the wine that comes from Les Chenevots is a specific 2-hectare vineyard in the Côte de Beaune, right next to Le Montrachet, one of the most expensive wines in the entire world. And what's interesting about that is that this vineyard plot is right next to the most expensive wine that's ever been produced from a white wine standpoint, and even wine in general. So that in and of itself is really, really a really cool
This comes from a 2-hectare vineyard.
2-hectare vineyard that is many different producers own different vineyard plots with different rows of vines. And so what Domaine Chanson does is that they purchase vines from vineyards that they own, but also from other vineyards within this 2-hectare plot of Les Chenevots. And then they produce the wine. What's great about this is that this has complete an east-facing exposure. It is aged for 12 to 14 months in oak barrels. Only about 25% of that is new, but it's aged in those oak barrels in their cellar that dates back to the 15th century, which is really, in and of itself, really quite.
So how many bottles would they produce in a given year?
That's a great question, Chris. I don't know off the top of my head, and that's a little bit of research I'd have to do on the background. But the thing is about Burgundy is that, and the vineyard plots in and of itself, is that they produce very low yields of vines. And that's a good thing, because the lower the yields per vine, the more concentrated the flavors are in the fruit that they do harvest. They are limited by how much they're allowed to produce per vine and per acreage, and in order to maintain a level of quality.
Who would be the limiting factor? Would it be the actual vineyard owner?
No, it has everything to do with Burgundy in and of itself. The thing about the world of wine is that when it comes to Spain, when it comes to France, when it comes to Italy, everybody has their own specific set of rules as to what they're allowed to produce in order to maintain a quality level. And so when it comes to Burgundy, there are Grand Cru vineyards like Le Montrachet next door to here, and then right under that are Premier Cru vineyards, which are this. So this is about as from a quality level, your second best quality level of white Burgundy that you can possibly buy. And we have on our list here at Mount Alverno. And so it's a really exciting wine to talk about because it is from a reputable producer that makes well-made wines from all over Burgundy, white and red. This just so happens to be from Chassagne Montrachet, one of my most favorite wines in the entire world, and from a great producer from a great vintage.
Why did you introduce this specific wine to our wine list?
A few different reasons. Burgundy is really hard to get your hands on these days. The demand for Burgundy is off the charts. And so there is a lot of Burgundy to be had, but you also want to make sure that you're doing it with a reputable producer and also from vineyard plots that, to be honest, are, Chassagne Montrachet, Premier Cru, Les Chenevots, but up to the Le Montrachet vineyard. It tells a story above and beyond. Bottles of Le Montrachet sell for $1,000. And on a restaurant wine list, you could expect to pay $2,000 to $3,000 for that. This wine on our wine list is $350. It shows incredible value. It shows incredible value in it from a region that's a hard thing to come by. And with Burgundy being such a boutique product and such a niche product, not everybody wants to spend that amount of money on wine, but there are a lot of people when it comes to from a collector market, or if you wanted to enjoy some of the finer things in life, white Burgundy is one of those wines by far. And I wanted to introduce this to you, not only because it is my favorite wine, but I had a feeling that it wasn't a wine that you've ever tasted before.
No. Yeah.
And as we continue to do this, we're not always going to be tasting the most expensive wines in the world, because there is a time and a place for every wine that's on our list. And that's why I'm creating a wine list that's eclectic. But if you're going to create a wine list that is eclectic, you want to make sure that you have all your bases covered. You want to have your entry-level Pinot Grigios and from Italy, your Pinot Gris from the Pacific Northwest that's coming next week, but also have some of the most coveted wines in the entire world from one of the most, and arguably, as far as I'm concerned, just a special bottle of wine that I think this view and our patio and our restaurant and our resort deserves to have a wine of this quality.
I can't agree with you more. There's one thing I can tell you. We can buy a great wine, but we can't create that view.
I know. It's interesting the amount of guests that come join us for the first time or for the 10th time. And they're always blown away by our view and what we have. Because I think what we're doing here is really special. And it goes to show that even as a person like me who comes to work every single day, I never tire of the location that we find ourselves in. And I think that it's a special time and a special place to be able to enjoy something that's really special in and of itself.
What I'd like to do, if you're in agreement, the next wine session, why don't we do something fun like the classic New World versus Old?
I'd love it.
And let's just try to expand our search for different bottles of wine that we can offer our guests that perhaps guests aren't necessarily familiar with, but they would welcome. like you did with this wonderful wine.
You know, one of the things that you know this, Chris, is that that we've been doing here is we've been doing a lot of wine tastings on our property. We have a lot of like not only corporate guests, but also like just guests in general that are interested in wine, just like you and I are.
Yeah.
And by being able to walk them through like a discussion on all things Chardonnay, or to talk about the different sparkling wines of the world, or the best of Napa Valley, and showing the nuances between the two. These are some of the things that we do here on the property. We do it down on our pond terrace that you can't see now, but we've done it there. We've done it on our patio. We've done it in Thompson Hall. But the idea is that like there's a lot of fun things that I'm passionate about wine. I like to talk about wine with anybody that'll listen. And that goes for not only the people that are watching this video segment, but also the people that dine with us on our patio and in our restaurant. I'm constantly talking about the different wines that we have on our list, and allowing people to explore the world of wine, because wine can be confusing to a novice, or to somebody that just doesn't know. And I love being able to share that knowledge with people, because it is fascinating to me, and it becomes fascinating to most.
And one thing I really appreciate, Scott, you give our guests as much information as they want to know.
Mm-hmm.
You don't force anything. You just let the guests ask you the questions, and you educate them to the degree they want to be educated.
Of course.
Just like myself, I'm a novice.
Yeah.
I don't know much,
Yeah.
but I know what I like. And everything that you've suggested,
Yeah.
I find incredible. And I thank you for that.
I'm glad to hear it, Chris, because at the end of the day, wine is meant to be shared and wine's meant to be appreciated. And those two things happen all the time at Mount Alverno and at the Vista restaurant. And if I can share that experience with all of our guests, and have our guests share that experience together, that's the point of hospitality. That's what we're doing here every single day. And I love the fact that we can broaden our horizons and do it in front of many, many people.
To conclude, I have one question for you.
Sure.
We opened this bottle maybe about an hour ago,
Yeah.
and I am getting other notes.
Yeah.
Now, is it because it's opened up just in...
100%. It's had the ability to open up. It's been in touch with the air. We've been swirling it in our glass. It's much different. It's also warmer. It's not as cold to the touch as it was when we first opened it. All of these things factor into the evolution of a bottle of wine, especially once you open it. So the evolution of the wine happens within the bottle before you pull the cork, when you hold onto it in your cellar for 15 years. But once you pull that cork, and that time frame that you have from the first glass to the last sip, you have the chance to experience the wine many different times. And some of the best wines in the world, that's exactly what they're designed to do. And that's exactly what they do in spades. And so by being able to appreciate one of the best wines in the world, in my opinion, is by seeing where it started and where it grows to and where it finishes off. And I think, just like you know, it's been an hour that we've been tasting this wine, and much like a cigar keeps getting, the best cigars get better as time goes on, a bottle of wine does the same thing. And sometimes, by the way, you can put those two things together, and it's really, really quite exceptional.
And I think one of the next things we have to do is a Scotch tasting.
Oh, now we're talking my language. We have, as you know, we have an incredible Scotch lineup here that takes all 4 regions of Scotch production and has different labels that offer something that's uniquely different. And I think it would be really interesting, not only on video, but also in person, to be able to like offer a really nice overlap of where Scotch can take you and the different nuances between you. I think it's great.
Scott, it's always a pleasure.
Chris, it's always a pleasure. I can't wait to share the next bottle with you.